Welcome everybody to Moderate Mods, and today we're dealing with the 1991 Bentley Turbo R. Now this has long been one of my favourites added to the this Forza game after it got added by the festival playlist, and yeah, obviously plenty of cars have come since then that I've also really enjoyed, but this has still been steadfastly one of my top 10 cars added via the festival playlist in during this year, and yeah, even though it is one of my favourites, so I'm not going to say that it's perfect, because it isn't, but that's one reason why I really like it. But obviously those imperfections are able to be cured, because obviously we have the ability to upgrade cars, and yeah, this is a perfect candidate for doing that. It's one of the reasons why I started this series, is because of this car, because I realised it has its flaws and therefore is a car that can be made better, even though I do still like it in a lot of ways. So yeah, it's got a hell of a lot of power though, 328 horsepower and 487 pounds-feet of torque from a 6 3/4 litre V8 engine that is also turbocharged, but it does weigh a hefty amount of 5,313 pounds, which is to be expected from a Bentley even today, never mind 29 years ago or whatever. So yeah, it's still a Herculean of a beast in terms of weight, but it's got plenty of power and torque to make them, to negate a lot of that weight. But it is still a hefty car. But handling wise and braking wise, it's still fairly decent. Acceleration could be obviously better, as well as launch, but top speed is fairly good as well. And yeah, it's reasonably balanced as well. As you can see, it's nearly 50-50 weight distribution, which for a large luxury saloon car is yeah, highly impressive. So let's see what it can do in terms of its stock form around this circuit, and then we'll get to the garage and see how many upgrades are needed to make this car that a little bit better. So yeah, big problem with this car is the launch and the gearbox. It's only a 4-speed. It's generally in automatic mode, even when you drive it as a manual, and yeah, it's not got the highest of revs either. Now the revs aren't really a problem, and neither is the surge of power that you get from the rather large V8. It's the fact that it's got really rather long gear ratios, which do not make the most of that power, while the launch is rather slow as well. You don't want a car that's struggling to get off the line. Even in a luxury vehicle like this, you want a nice surge off the line. You don't want it to be stuttering and slowing down while trying to get going. And but yeah, obviously there's a balance to be struck. We obviously don't want this car to be roaring off the line, but we also want it to be going quicker. And yeah, obviously handling is pretty decent. The R in this car's name doesn't stand for racing or anything like that. It stands for road holding, and that's what we're going to be doing. We're not going to be making it a lightweight, fast car. We're going to be keeping a lot of what this car already is, but just making it that a little bit better, which is the whole point of this series, just making cars a little bit better. So yeah, 1 minute 17.678 seconds is fairly decent, to be honest, for a large car like this. To be honest, it doesn't roll around as much as you'd expect for a heavy, comfortable car. Even though it could be faster, it's hardly a slouch. I'm keeping up with a Mazda MX-5, as you can see. Definitely could do with wider tyres, improved brakes, lighten the car a little bit in terms of maybe driveline, clutch, flywheel, just to offset the obviously wider tyres that we are going to be giving it. But yeah, as you can see, it's in 3rd gear and 4th gear. It's just really not all that responsive in terms of gaining speed. Still, 1 minute 10.621 is our second lap time there, which just shows how much the launch of this car slows this car down on a standing start lap. But obviously on our flying lap we're much quicker because we're not obviously having to deal with the launch of this car. We're also going to try and hopefully keep it as quiet as it is. I know it's got twin exhausts and a large V8, but a large part of the appeal of this car is the fact that it's quite quiet. So I think we'll have to stick to that. So we're not going to be upgrading the exhaust or anything like that, because that would obviously make it far louder. And that's not the point of a Bentley like this. We are going to improve just about on our third and final lap at 1 minute 9.837, which is fairly decent for a car of this size, weight and age. Obviously the power and the torque there makes up for a lot of its flaws in terms of the weight and the gearbox, but obviously there are improvements to be made. So yeah, nonetheless, let's get to the garage and see what improvements we can give this car. So this is the car in all its glory, in case you haven't seen this car in full before. And yeah, as you can see, a absolutely titanic sized car. Huge boot, huge amount of rear leg room, and yeah, hardly a small engine to go with it. But obviously it would need that kind of engine because of how big and large it actually is. So yeah, let's look at the acceleration times first. It's 0 to 16 6.670 seconds, which is actually fairly good for such a large car that doesn't even have 400 horsepower. A lot of cars that do weigh more than £5,000 nowadays do have that kind of power, whereas obviously this only has 328 horsepower. 0 to 119.350 seconds, which again is decent, but could be better, and a fairly good top speed of 149. But the gearbox does, make getting that top speed really rather unlikely in most cases. So yeah, the gearbox is the first thing we're going to change. Obviously, I think this only gives it up to a 5-speed. Which is more than enough, to be honest, because as you can see it improves the launch and the acceleration quite a fair bit. If we were to go more, again it would improve the acceleration and the launch even better, but a race transmission is a little bit too racy for a car like this. We will give it a race driveline though, because it does massively take out a fair bit of weight there. Brakes, we'll go for sporty brakes, just because we want to make sure that this car can slow down. We won't give it any sporty suspension, but we will improve the roll bars just to stop any of that roll that we saw a little bit of, but there wasn't too much, so no real reason to go massively over the top with the suspension. We will widen the tyres on massively, 305s from 235s, so we're going up an extra 70mm there, which will help the roll holding. We'll go with 265s at the front, so hopefully help any of the understeer. And power wise, well, we want to keep it quiet, so I think we'll go for the turbocharger. Stick it up to the sport one. Takes up to 65 horsepower by 65 horsepower, but as you can see it's mostly the torque that it has an effect on. It goes up nearly 100 torques, which is pretty damn good. We'll have to give it a sport intercooler and sport oil, or yeah, we'll give it sport oil just so the turbocharger is able to cool down properly, and we'll improve the air filter as well. Give it a street intake, and we'll improve the valves as well. So yeah, 420 horsepower. Don't go making any jokes about 420. We'll give it a sporty flywheel, take out another 8 pounds. And yeah, that'll do, I think, to be honest. We could obviously lighten it even some more. Do we really need to care about a spare wheel, battery, smaller tools? I don't really think we do, to be honest. I think it would help the car a fair old bit if we just took out that little bit of weight. Obviously we don't go any further than that. We do want to keep our sound system and the like, and we're certainly not going to be going all the way to race weight reduction, but I think that £160 would be of benefit, so we'll do that, and that'll be it. So yeah, we've gone up nearly 100 horsepower, we've gone down by £100, so that's fairly good, and we're now in B class, so that's fairly good. But as you can see, we've only spent about 15,500 credits, which isn't all that much when you consider the big changes that we've given to this car. And now acceleration times, yeah, 5.295 seconds, so we're more than a second quicker to 60. 14.172 seconds to 100, so we're more than 5 seconds quicker to 100, and we're now doing 162 miles an hour, so that's another 13 mile an hour quicker at the top end. So yeah, that is a pretty drastic change there. So yeah, let's get out back onto the circuit and see what this car can do. So yeah, like I said, we're in B class now, and you can see by the improvements in terms of the stats that we've got a better car on the whole here, where launch is incredibly better, to be honest. Handling and braking isn't drastically better, but it's enough to you know, make sure that we're able to handle the extra power and the torque that we're dealing with. Speed is a little bit better, obviously, and acceleration is obviously better as well. So yeah, they're the stats that we're dealing with, and they're the numbers. 624 pounds-feet of torque is a huge amount of torque, but I like a torquey engine, especially in a car like this. So yeah, that's a benefit really. Only real issue is going to be whether or not the gear ratios are long enough to keep the car in character, but also, I mean, it's not stupidly slow, or at least slow in terms of gaining revs and gaining speed. But as you can see, we're infinitely better off the line. A little bit of wheel spin, which obviously would be cured if I weren't so heavy on the throttle, but it's still got a pretty lovely surge going on with the torque there. I think if I wanted it to be a little bit more like what it was originally in terms of gaining speed, which is just a nice surge of power rather than these pretty short gear ratios, then I'd have to give it the race transmission, because that's the only way you can actually change gears is by giving a race transmission to work with a car. The same with pretty much every kind of thing, you know, you need race aero to change the aero, you need race suspension to change the suspension rates and stuff like that. So yeah, I'd have to make a compromise on the race transmission to make the gear ratios a little bit, but to be honest they are still pretty good, and because it has far more torque than it has horsepower, it's still a car that, yeah, gains speed in a way that really most other cars with this kind of power do not. There's a lot of cars on this game that have around 420 horsepower, but not many gain speed in this kind of way, so that's pretty good. So yeah, 1 minute 13.373 seconds for our first lap time, which is about 6 seconds than our first lap time than it was first time around in the stock car. Certainly seems to hold the road a little bit better as well than last time. Turns in a little nicer. It's certainly stopping a lot better as well because of those new brakes and the fact that we're weighing 100 pounds less. Come on, we're beating a early 70s Charger or Challenger in. Were. And you can tell we've made so many improvements, because, well, a good amount of improvements, because we're doing more than 100 mile an hour across the finish line, which I don't think we ever did in the stock car. So yeah, 1 minute 7.301 there. That's faster than our fastest lap time in the stock version of this car. You can be a lot braver on the brakes with this, but obviously you can't take advantage of it too much because you're still dealing with a £5,000 car, and that's a lot of momentum to slow down. You don't have to be quite as forceful as you would in the stock car, even at the same rate of speeds. And there we go, 1 minute 7.050. Not a massive improvement over the second lap, but an improvement nonetheless. And yeah, crucially quicker than the stock car was, but not by a massive amount, surprisingly. We were only just over, well, the stock car did 1 minute 9.837, so we're just over nearly 3 seconds quicker, but that's not a massive amount, which just shows that, yeah, this car does need a lot more in terms of upgrades to make it a far more competitive vehicle. Obviously, I've done a fair old amount to it. I changed the brakes, changed the anti-roll bars, I gave it a bigger turbocharger, I gave it a new air filter, new valves, wider tyres front and rear, knocked out 160 pounds or so of the weight overall. Plus obviously lightened the driveline, gave it a new gearbox, which is a lot, but obviously not quite enough to make it even better over the stock car in terms of speed, acceleration and handling. So yeah, if you want this car to be infinitely quicker than the stock car, then you're going to have to do a lot more than I've done to it. But I like it either way. I like it in its stock form and I like it in this version. So yeah, this car is a really, really good car in a lot of ways, stock or otherwise, and I just love the fact that it is on the game in general, because yeah, we've never had this Bentley before in a Forza game. We've never had a Bentley from this kind of period before. So yeah, it's a really, really nice addition to the game, and yeah, highly recommend getting it if you haven't already. Though you're going to have to search high and low to try and find it, because it's currently not available on the festival playlist, though I'm sure someone's auctioning it at some point. But yeah, it's a great car nonetheless and to get a hold of, and yeah, I'm sure you'll enjoy it as well if you're into these kind of cars, which I certainly am. Anyway, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.